between, the carjacking and car theft numbers?
Sure, so both of those areas were down. So where we were with carjackings, we're not there. We're just not where we used to be. It's just a fact. But it doesn't mean that we're not, seeing them. So yes, we do continue to see carjackings, definitely not at the rate that we were. So that's progress moving in the right direction. But the New Orleans Police Department will continue not only to respond, hold people accountable, but again, just demonstrating that we're being very creative in deployment strategies, and that's why I think really what I contribute to the decline, both in carjackings as well as auto thefts. It's just a historical decline relative to both. But again, it doesn't mean that we're not seeing them, but it does mean it's not at the rate nor level that we have seen in the past, and it is because of these deployment strategies. And I'm not going to tell you where they are. I'm not going to inform the criminals. But what I do want to say is that we're just putting more resources to bear because we're seeing results. And NOPD, I know Chief Woodfork is doing some reorg now because that's what they do with data, use it to influence deployment strategies. So I just have to push back on that. It's not an incline, it's actually a decrease, but again, it doesn't mean that we're not seeing them.
Axios, do you have a question?
I do. It's good news about no homicides last week. Do you have any factors that you think went into that? Anything that went right last week that we can continue to do?
Yes. Yes. What we believe, first of all, when we can keep criminals off the street, from the sound and solid arrests that our New Orleans police officers continue to demonstrate, and through our specialized operations division and the like, again, using these strategies or data to influence our strategies, we're getting more of these people off the street. And when we can keep them off the street, we see the results on the ground, fewer homicides. I struggle with that only because we have individuals that are within our Juvenile Justice Intervention Center right now that we believe, because they're off the street, it has resulted in last week with no homicides. These individuals call themselves the No Hospital Gang. And what that means is that they don't want you to go to the hospital. They want you to die on the spot. That's very concerning to me. I'm reaching out to parents and guardians associated with these young people. I have requested a meeting with these young people. I am determined to not allow these young people to negatively influence or impact other young people that we have at the JJIC, but it is very concerning. These are young people in our city. And when you listen to them, and you hear what they say, and then you even hear the name, no hospital, and with the intentions of no one going to the hospital, something that we all should be concerned about. And definitely, this is not a time to attack or be negative relative to the men and women that we depend on to keep us safe. And it's a direct reflection of the same men and women that are doing the job every single day. And so we have to be consistent in our support of the New Orleans Police Department and our officers because they're doing the job.
I'm sorry, quick follow-up question. How many people are we talking about?
I'm not going to give you a number. It's over 5.
Over 5.
It's over 5. I'm not going to give you a number simply because investigations continue to be deployed and there are potential arrests, right, that could be forthcoming. So I don't want you to get me caught up in saying one thing and then you negatively coming after me for saying, I'm not doing that. But I will say that men and women of the New Orleans Police Department, our specialized ops, just continue to deliver on behalf of the residents of this city and even those 800 that responded to that survey, speaking negative about NOPD.
Patsy, there'll be the issue, and then let me get to
I'll let
it.
Shay go.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay, sorry. And so you said no homicides from the week of June 4th through 10th? From the June 4th through 10th?
Last week,
Last week.
yeah, we ended with not one.
And I know you can't really talk about the no hospital gang, but were all of them arrested?
The ones that we have arrested, yeah, they're off the street. And that's what we're contributing to a quieter week last week. And it's a fact, when these criminals are off the street, we see a direct result on the street, meaning in our neighborhoods, throughout our city. It's just a fact. They need to be off the street.
And you believe that they're responsible for a lot of the most recent homicides?
We had no homicides last week. So something, yeah, I would say. These are individuals that have committed violent crimes in the city of New Orleans. And when they are off the street and held accountable, we see a positive result throughout our city.
I know you were talking about mental health services. Are these services aimed specifically towards New Orleans youth? If you could just kind of talk about the importance of that, if it is aimed at New Orleans youth, and, just the importance of that amid the crime that we've been seeing.
Sure. So here recently with the CEAs that I signed, that I mentioned, even on last week when we unveiled our partnership with the New Orleans, the Children's Hospital, NOLA Public Schools, the City of New Orleans, our health department. This is something that we know will have an immediate impact on our young people. $10 million, it's an unprecedented investment that we're making over a 3-year period. It really is my hope that this city will be able to sustain this level of investment towards mental health, but it's also our ability to ensure wellness across the board for our youth as well as our families. It's like you can get your foot in the door, and if we help that young person, it helps us also be able to get a sense of what's happening in the family unit and also be able to connect that family with resources as well. But this partnership, it really is centered around youth in the city because COVID didn't help us. It only made things worse. And we were already going into the reality that pretty much 54% of our young people have experienced mental health matters or illness, but with no help. And so because of that, it was just imperative that we did something creative while we push for additional resources from the federal level as well as the state level regarding mental health services in our city. But COVID has made it harder, meaning the burden that it's put on our young people from, of course, violence, anxieties, suicides. All these things are up. And after COVID-19, and it's not just something in our city or in our state. We are seeing the trends across the country. Just yesterday, I was on a call with several of my brother and sister mayors. It was led by Mayor Turner of Houston, but we had our meeting with our federal regional partners, FEMA, HHS, and the like, Homeland Security, and one of the main topics that we spoke about was mental health and how it touches everything from homelessness to housing. It's just something that we'll have to continue to focus on.
One more question, then I'm done. If you could give us the status when it comes to the NOPD police chief search. I know you talked about that.
Okay, so what I'll give you right now would be I'm losing my thought here. It was released on last week in terms of the qualifications, right? and the notice that we're hiring, that the qualifications were outlined there. And so now we're moving into that phase of accepting applications. And so that's pretty much where we are. The team can give you more on that after the press conference, but I think the biggest piece for me was getting to the place where we are now starting to really recruit potential candidates.
Pass C with WDSU and NWW.
Perfect. Well, good morning, Mayor. Going on mental health, I know that you said that's been a big focus for you. A couple weeks ago, the juvenile judges went before City Council asking and proposing a mental health assessment center from the city so they can better, assess some of the kids that are going through the system when it first goes, instead of waiting till, after the fact to find out what's going on. Do you support that, and is the city going to be moving forward with that?
Well, I would like to know and learn more about it. That's exactly why our commissioner, right, our Commissioner Stevens, organized several meetings specifically with the juvenile court judges to hear from them directly. But only one attended. But even what I heard from them when they did go before the city council about how busy they are. Well, we're all busy, but at the end of the day, we should be busy working on solutions collectively. And so what I will continue to encourage is a collaboration where we can all understand how we're wanting to push for and implement solutions, specifically, not just, specifically towards mental health, but just across the board to ensure accountability across the board. And so the one-offs are a problem for me, especially when we create opportunities for real dialogue and engagement with all of our partners and stakeholders relative to juvenile justice. Those partners participated, and only a Judge Clinton Smith participated from the bench. And so I am open always for dialogue, specifically around solutions, have always deployed resources and have been at the forefront of creating programs that the judges can refer our young people to, like Pathways and the like, where we're seeing results on that, and even getting more resources on the ground aligned with programs that are working. So I want to go with what we know is working. And so, but not against onboarding new services and programs. But it does take collaboration, and it does require everyone coming to the table so that we can get behind it, holistically and together. Unified is what I'm after.
Perfect. I have one more question. On your recent trip to South Korea, overall there was $30,000 spent on flights for you and 2 other members of your group. Do you think that was the best use of taxpayer money?
Absolutely. Because the city of New Orleans, we're a world-class city. The city of New Orleans is a model for being on the front lines of climate change in the United States of America. The city of New Orleans is one of the only cities deploying and investing in infrastructure like we are in this city, that we know in some cases are forthcoming in other cities across the country. The city of New Orleans, and especially when you talk about South Korea and having sister city agreements in South Korea. Our partners travel. And so it's like a force multiplier. It's speaking to and being that example and that model and sharing best practices on the ground and in real time with our partners across the world, also throughout the country. It speaks to this city wanting to increase not only levels of partnership, but traveling to the city of New Orleans, which was definitely a part of discussions with my delegation that came to meet me from Jeonju. The mayor made sure they sent a delegation just speaking to our cultural exchanges and also ways that we will continue to send artists and cultural bearers to South Korea, because that's what we do. And so it's aligned with being the mayor of a world-class city. So it's something that I stand by and will continue to uplift as the mayor.
Were you ever advised not to fly first class within the United States, unless you were going to upgrade your tickets? upgrade
I don't
ticket to
understand.
pay for it.
I don't understand your question.
Were you ever advised by a city employee not to fly first class here in the United States unless you were gonna pay for the upgrade?
Oh, no. What I do and the practices that I have upholded, particularly pre-COVID, because I would upgrade my own. And then flying under the conditions of COVID and wanting to make sure that I protect me, meaning peace of mind, the safety and the like, I am more protected mentally as well as physically flying first class. And this is something that is not a luxury. It is something that I deem necessary, and it's something that I've paid for and I continue to pay for.
Thank you.
WWL and then Fox 8, and then we're done.
Do you think Superintendent Woodford should order a PIB investigation in how the crash involving Cedric Richmond was handled? And should NOPD investigate further by asking for Richmond's hospital records to rule out DWI?
No, I think the New Orleans Police Department and the officers that responded to that incident responded according to policy and procedure. And as a result of that, that's pretty much what it is. I do not push for or request PIB to do any investigations relative to Cedric Richmond. I think that we've done that, meaning we responded in real time, and that's it.
Fox 8.
On the topic of Plaza Tower, can you say whether or not the city has resumed issuing daily fines on the owner of Plaza Tower? And if not, what would your response be to those people, I'm thinking specifically those council members who say the city is in a posture to begin resuming fines, daily fines?
Well, what I will say is what I said relative to Plaza Tower. The city will begin to organize a cost hearing so that we will understand the true costs associated with it, that we will make sure that the same rules and fines apply to this owner just like every other owner.
And on the topic of the no hospital gang that you were touching on, do you know if these teens have been adjudicated as guilty? And if so, what will be the timeline as far as transferring them into?
I'm not a judge. I'm the mayor of the city of New Orleans. And under my authority is the New Orleans Police Department. Our officers have done their job, they're arrested, they're off the streets of the city of New Orleans. This speaks to accountability across the board relative to criminal justice partners that also involve our juvenile court partners as well.
Thank you all.